Hello, 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 hello.
Oh,
Hello.
so many hellos. Hi.
Yeah, that's a fantastic introduction.
What's up, dude? Sorry for the delay. Zoom decided that I had to update it before I could use it.
Fuck it. You know
Ah,
what?
man,
Tech,
technology.
it's
Can
the worst. It's the worst. It's the worst and the best. It means that we can do this via distance, which is cool, but it also means it's way harder than it needs to be every time.
This is very true.
How are you, man?
Great. How are you guys?
We're good.
we're
We're
good.
good.
Look, no, like, sorry, man. We're gonna fangirl for a moment
Oh,
here.
okay.
This is an absolute fucking pleasure, dude. Like, you have written and released some of the most important albums to our musical journey, and obviously, we're here to talk about the fact you're going to be playing one of those in Australia. So this is a legit absolute pleasure for us.
Wow, thank you so much. That means the world to me. Thank you very much.
I was gonna play it cool and pretend like I wasn't impressed, but now I don't get to do that. So I'm just gonna sit here doing this the whole time.
Yeah, dude. Many a night were your band's tunes the soundtrack to what we here call pre-drinks before we go out, and it's when you're young and you don't have much money, so you sit at someone's house and you drink really cheap, horrible alcohol, so you don't have to spend as much money on alcohol when you go out with your friends. So yeah, thank you for that.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
I have to disagree with you there, seeing as I was
You don't drink.
no, and I was also 13, you old fuck. Yeah, when you guys really sort of slipped into the a bit more of a mainstream and when you would have been into emotion,
Mhm.
I was quite literally
Like
13.
emotion is in feelings,
When
or
you found your emotions for the first time. But hey, I will say this that my girlfriend in high school put We're at the Top of the World in a playlist. So that was a really cute moment for me because that's how I discovered you through that one song and was like, well, she's into me. It's a good sign. She made me a mixtape. So thank you.
That was what an era. The mixtape and mix CD era is something that I feel like I don't really think Gen Z can necessarily appreciate that, even though they make great playlists. It's just there's a lot less work involved in that, you know?
100%. And there's also like the not the tangible thing of like drawing on the CD with your Sharpie and stuff and putting like the track list handwritten on the back. There
Yep.
was an art that went into that that is, yeah, lacking now.
So true.
yeah, the times have changed. And speaking of times changing, uh, how are you feeling getting geared up to perform this album, which is almost 25 years old?
It's crazy to think of. It's weird because when the band started out, we were a side project and our goal was to play one show and do a 3 song demo tape. And like I had never sung in a band before. So it was like, oh yeah, let's all just do different instruments than we normally do, and we'll just have this fun side project thing, and we'll play one show and do a 3 song demo tape. So the idea that our first record is 25 and our second record is about to be 25, and that people care about those records and people all the way across the world care about those records is like that's something that's not lost on us. It's like it's mind blowing to me, really, to be honest.
After taking some time off and coming back to it, and obviously you did some reimagined versions of these old songs, which is completely different sonically. Um, has it given you a new appreciation for those songs as they were back then?
It did. It gave me it a lot. All of that gave me a new appreciation because for a long time, I knew that the band, meant something to the guys that were in the band. I knew it meant something to me because of, just because of the memories that we shared and all of that. But there was a time for a while where I just felt like we were, we were always like a cult band and we never, got big. But I always felt like, I don't know, there was this a time period for a while that I thought that we were basically completely unknown or completely forgotten. And then to kind of be able to see that, to have people come up to us the last couple of years that we've been playing again, to have people be like, "Oh my gosh, this is our 13-year-old daughter Juliana that we named after your band," and like she
Yeah.
grew up listening, and those kind of stories where I'm like, oh wow, this is crazy. So yeah, and yeah, I think too, just like yeah, musically, all of it, I feel more. It's weird. You feel like reconnecting with songs that you wrote that long ago, and some of them that we haven't played in a really long time. It really is a time capsule, and then some of the songs, like it feels like they change their meaning over time. It's a cool experience, honestly.
Do you have the presence to look back and kind of analyze what it is about the sound that you guys captured that resonated with so many people on such a deep level? Like, why do you think that is with the benefit of hindsight?
I think that's a really good question, and I have thought about that.
It's about
I
time I got
definitely
one good one.
I feel like there's one time like a year or two ago, because we're working on a bunch of new stuff. I really went like deep in my head one day, and I was like, what is it? What was the things about our band that people connected to? And I wrote this like Rivers Cuomo-esque, completely like OCD level list of like what I thought all these things were. And I'm like, just thinking like, I don't know if any of these are the things that people connect to necessarily, because it's impossible for me to detach myself from the perspective of like being one of the creators of the music, to think about it from an outside perspective. But I do think it's like, obviously timing is super important. We came in an era where it was like we grew up and got to see Nirvana blow up, like right as that was happening, and we were like 12 or whatever. And so it's like all of a sudden there was always guitar rock, but it felt almost inaccessible because all the stuff that was big was like really hard to play, and you had to be almost like a virtuoso. And so all of a sudden you see like Nirvana come out and bands like that, and you're like, oh, okay, and Green Day, and you're like, oh, we don't necessarily have to be like prog metal masters or whatever to make music. And so I think we were lucky to come at a time period where music was a bit more stripped down. And then of course we like are sort of in the emo hardcore punk community, and we kind of chose to be a little bit more theatrical and a little bit more melodic and poppy than most of our peers at that exact moment. I think like like Jimmy Eat World was always, of course, like super poppy, and I'm not saying we were the only people that did that, but I think like we were one of the few. And so it was kind of just coming in at a moment where they just like, yeah, we were lucky to be at the time that we were, I think, for
I feel
sure.
like you guys, like, because Love is still to this day one of my favorite albums of all time. I think it's just such a perfect amalgamation of what you guys were as a band. And I think one of the important things about what you guys did, and even Jimmy Eat World to an extent, was you were akin to these hardcore punk, emo, screamo crossover bands because you had a similar sound sonically. But in terms of your writing, for me, it was always a case where like, where you lent into the heaviness, there was more of it was all about dynamics, and it was all about where the riff is going to hit the hardest. Tracks like Congratulations and Bring It Low off that album, for instance, there was also a little bit more of a classic rock feel to some of the stuff that you guys did. But then adversely, on the other side of that, like the melodic stuff, it's funny because you guys were in the emo scene, but a lot of those bands that people referred to as emo, I heard why they were an emo band, but it didn't really hit me emotionally the way that your softer tracks did. And
it's because emotion's dead. Sorry, my bad. I'll see myself.
Yeah, you had one good one that you ruined it. Yeah, no, but I think that there was something about your songwriting that really sort of managed to and fro the listener in the best way possible.
Thank you so much. I think we always had a joke within the band that we're schizophrenic musically, because it was like exactly what you said. You think about Emotion is Dead, and you have like a song like Is Patient Still Waiting that has like, breakdown and screams in it. And then you have Something Isn't Right Here, which is like a borderline boy band meets power pop kind of thing. And then you have like Top of the World, which is just like literally as poppy as it can be, and then you have this like 9 minute, like 9 minute "We Wish We Were Pink Floyd" song at the end. So I think like we always felt that it was like our favorite bands were the kind of bands that you never knew, like you never knew what, like a Beatles record, you never knew what song was going to be what after it. And I think like I always use the greatest meat and potatoes band of all time is your very own AC/DC, and I always use that as an example of like they are like the greatest example of a band that had one sound, perfected that sound, never deviated from it because they did it so perfectly. And I think like the Juliana Theory was never good enough at one sound to just perfect it, so we just had to try a bunch of different things.
You just touched on the 9 minute journey that is You Always Say Goodnight. And I have to confess, so I was too young to have really gotten into Pink Floyd before that. So you were my Pink Floyd to start with. That song was like transcendent to me of like, one, just the fact that you said you weren't doing vocals before that, fuck you. That's because that song's ridiculous and your vocals are insane.
Thank you so much.
But yeah, that was like a journey of a song, and it had like obviously this big crescendo, and it built into something huge. But the way it took you, I'd never heard anything like that before, and that was like my first taste of that. And obviously, then growing up and being like, well, I better go check out this Pink Floyd and bands like that in the past. But you guys were the first band for me that I actually like got to really appreciate that and hear that scope of sound. I know you're being very modest, but you guys fucking crushed it. It didn't sound like you didn't know what you were doing.
Thank you so much. We thank you. We just we fake it till you make it, I guess. I don't know.
That's the story of my life. I hope to make it one day.
you will. Keep faking.
So how's preparation been in terms of playing some of those older songs? Like you said, we all get a little bit older, and, our bodies and our vocals don't want to do the things that we used to do as easily, or it comes with a lot of sacrifice and hard work. How is that looking for you as the vocalist in terms of those dynamics and those harder moments to the softer moments?
I think about that is something I do have to think about a lot, and I make jokes about it all the time. It's like, if I had known when I was 20, years old, and having not really sang before, it was like, if I had known that I was going to have to think some of the same stuff 25 years later, I'd be like, no, I would not write it this way. And I think about that so intensely. However, the stuff we're working on now, I'm pushing my vocals maybe harder than I even did then. And I'm thinking to myself, like, why are you doing this? But it's just like, I think in general, we were never like a big party band, and we always were kind of like mostly tried to, we have fun, but I always tried to put the show above anything else on tour. So it was like, I know some bands basically go on tour to party, and that's great. But for us, it was like, my only real priority is the hour and a half that we're on stage. And so for me, it's just getting as much sleep as I possibly can, like not talking a lot during the day, trying to preserve my voice after we play, just trying to drink a lot of water, and bringing a neurotic amount of like organic health voice related products on the road with me, just like whatever I can do to make sure that I don't lose my voice. Because really, there's only one time in my life that I completely lost my voice on stage, and it ruined a show for us, and it was on tour in Australia, the only time we were ever there. I remember I don't really do spicy food, and I just remember like we had catering at the venue, and they gave us this pasta. It's like pasta with spaghetti sauce, like spaghetti with tomato sauce, and I was having this pasta, and I was like, this is so spicy. Wow, this is incredibly spicy. Go up on stage, we play our first song, everything seems normal. Start our second song, and no joke, absolutely no sound came out of my voice, and it was completely normal before that. And we tried to do another song, absolutely no sound came out. I was like totally devastated. I remember telling the audience, like, or trying to tell the audience, whispering like, I'm so sorry, we can't play anymore. And I was like so upset. And then I went and like was looking up a bunch of stuff afterwards. And it's like, if you have really spicy food, it can like cause a bunch of like stomach
Like
acids to
stomach
go up
acid, yeah,
into
yeah.
your throat and just completely shut your vocal cords down. And I was like, all right, well, no,
Don't do that
not,
anymore.
yeah, exactly. So,
Well, it wasn't it. Yeah, you guys only came here once, but funnily
yeah.
enough, they played just down the road.
I was
Now,
too young. I
the
wasn't old enough to
Central
go into it.
Coast did not get that many shows, and you guys played at Terrigal.
Yeah, we did. Yep.
And funnily enough, like of worlds colliding, some friends of mine's band actually supported you in the Grey. Their guitarist is, as of next week, going to be my new boss. So there's a
Amazing.
yeah. But yeah, that show was incredible, and like you said, you weren't old enough to get in.
I wasn't allowed in the venue because I was too young. So
Oh,
I'm old enough this time, baby.
I feel like I have a story about that sort of ties into that. So I live in Los Angeles, and I ended up becoming really good friends with a couple Aussies, and one of them is Darren, aka Daz, the lead singer of Kiss Chasey, is like a really good friend of mine. And I found out, after I got to know him here, that he and one of my other best friends, who's a Australian singer songwriter that lives here named Mark Baker, that they were all at, I believe I guess it was one of the Melbourne shows. We did an all ages and an over 21, and apparently all of Kiss Chasey snuck into the all ages show so they could see us, but they were technically, I guess, too old to be at that, but they all apparently snuck into that. So it's like, it's like, I think, like, I remember we did the opposite of that. There was a Get Up Kids show in our hometown when we first started out, and our one guitar player was 15 at the time, and he wasn't old enough to get in. And the Get Up Kids gave him, like, they were like, here, take our guitars, carry our guitars in, and put a different jacket on him, and just walk right by the guy, and he'll just think you're one of us, and you'll get in. And so the Get Up Kids snuck us. So,
that's cool. I like
so
that.
Cool.
It's cool, like hearing those stories of bands you've toured with and played with. You're also coming to Oz with a band that's another super important band for me. It's Spill Canvas.
Great guys, love those guys.
Yeah, how did that come about? Because when I saw the tour package for this one, I like literal jaw drop. As I said, like they're 13-year-old memories for me, being like, there was a Spill Canvas song on that playlist. That same girl, shout out Jess Dyson,
so cool.
put for me. So I was like, how did that come about?
Okay, so that's okay. Spill Canvas is kind of really important in us being a band again, because the year was 2019, and we hadn't done anything in like 9 years as a band. And I'm a film composer most of the time, and I guess I had like a little break, and guy that is a friend of ours who's a booking agent in Pittsburgh reached out to Josh and me and was like, hey, would you guys have any interest in opening for the Spill Canvas as an acoustic with just the two of you? And at first I just was like, no, I don't know. Like, why would we do that? We haven't been a band in a really long time. And I don't even know if we're friends anymore. I don't know. I'm not sure if we want to do this. And for some reason, like, he was persistent, and the Spill Canvas really wanted us for some reason. And our friend who was like the agent was like really persistent. And so Josh and I guess like talked it over, and we were like, well, I guess like maybe we should consider this. And so we decided to do it. We ended up doing the full US opening as a 2-piece acoustic version of our band, opening for the Spill Canvas. And we ended up getting along so well and having so much fun that we just decided to like bring the band back and start playing as a full band and start working on new music and all of that. So it literally, there's a good chance maybe that we might not be doing anything right now had the Spill Canvas not asked us. So I think when I had the idea to come back to Australia, and I think I just must have spoke to our agent or somebody and was like, I feel like we could do it with Spill Canvas, or I probably suggested a couple bands, and they were like in right away, and we're like, okay, great, let's do it. So
that's so cool. It must be so nice for things to just come together that seamlessly and easily.
It is, because so many times it's so many times it's the opposite. So it is really nice when it does work out that way.
For
Also,
sure.
just the fact that you're both coming out with like 25-year anniversaries for both albums, like the timing and the way it worked out, it almost is meant to be like it. Yeah, the universe manifested that one for you, which is really
Agree.
nice.
Agree.
It's also cool as well with something like that because, as I said, like you're both bands that have a similar impact for me at that time. It means that it adds that so much more value to the audience of getting this experience of bands they probably listen to together for the same albums and were discovered around the same time. So it's like a double whammy for the value that the actual audience is getting, which is really cool.
I agree. I agree with that. That's kind of how we feel. It was like we hadn't been over in a long time, and we thought like let's make it as cool and valuable as we can. And it's like there's so many festivals now, and it just feels like it's harder to get the time to come out to a show. And if you can kind of make it something special, why not try to make it as cool as you can?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And like it's just such a cool thing to be able to play these albums in full. Uh, Now, in terms of playing that, obviously it makes picking a set list really easy. But what about in terms of, is there any sort of thought behind the order that you're going to play it? Because obviously, you've got your bigger songs. A lot of the time they fall towards the front of the album or the middle of the album. Or is it just going to be a play it start to finish the way it was intended to be listened to? Or
And realize that you put a really hard vocal song right at the end of the album after you've been using it for an hour.
They did that with French Kiss Off as well.
Oh, don't remind me. We try to just do it. We try to do it exactly how it was, and then if there's like an encore, we'll obviously we do some other stuff from different records. But yeah, it's like I feel like it to me. It's kind of weird to change the order just because it's like if in my opinion, it's like if you're intending to get it's like to keep it to go back to Pink Floyd. It's like if I went to see a Dark Side of the Moon tour and they played it in a completely different order, that would be really weird because I know that record so well that it would just be weird to hear it in a completely different order because things go into each other in a certain way and you just expect to hear a certain thing and come after another thing. So
yeah, but this also makes me think about the future of this sort of thing, because bands like yourselves and Coheed and Cambria and Thrice and Spill Canvas, all these bands are doing these anniversary shows for their albums. It came from a time when most people were consuming albums via a CD. And that doesn't really happen now. So I sort of think that a band who releases something now in 10, 15, 20 years' time, would an anniversary tour for an album like that be received the same way? Because a lot of people do, unfortunately, tend to not listen to an album now from start to finish. They chop and change, they take songs out and put them on playlists. What do you think that's going to look like in the future? And do you think you guys are lucky to have the opportunity where people would have consumed this album from start to finish?
I think we're very lucky to have been at the tail end of the full-on album era. I still think about albums as like complete pieces of art, something that is meant to be consumed as a collection. And I know that we're very much in the playlist era, but I still think that the great artists of today are still thinking of albums. Like, I mean, great example, of course, is the most talked about artist in America right now is Kendrick Lamar, and every single thing he's done, whether it was Good Kid, Mad City, To Pimp a Butterfly, Damn, Mr. Morales, like all of those are records that are complete pieces of art from top to bottom, where the songs segue into each other and have like connections and have themes that weave throughout the whole album. And so I feel like, though it's easier to skip songs now and maybe they're not as appreciated as much as they were, I think a lot of artists are still holding on to the idea of trying to make albums that are cohesive. So I hope that, it's like if in 20 years there was a Kendrick Lamar Damn tour, I would want to go see that, like, for instance, so I hope that's still going to be a thing.
Yeah.
I also think you look at like vinyl sales are at an all-time high. Like they've just
True.
gone up and up and up. And I think that's a trend that artists and people are actually choosing to go with like, I'm putting this on and I can't skip a song, same way I could a CD. I'm listening to the whole thing through A and then B or C, D, whatever it is.
It's really hard to pick the song you want on vinyl.
That's exactly it. I think that's because people are actually enjoying that experience.
Yeah.
With that being said, how do you guys feel about like the reissue? Will there be any vinyl stuff coming from you guys?
We're still trying to figure out if there's any way we can, if there's any way we can get some sort of Australian vinyl to happen in that time frame. It's time is usually the biggest issue, so that's still up in the air. But we are looking into it. I love being able to re-release things on vinyl just because when we released our records originally, a lot of times we didn't have much say or control in what the packaging was like.
Sure.
But I remember like when we released Love, for instance, the plan for that was we wanted all the different layers of the collage that's on the cover to be like this opaque, I don't know what material it would have been, but it would have been like each thing was an opaque layer. And so you would peel back each layer and you would see each part of the heart and then all these things that were elements in there, and they would stack on top of each other to make the final image. And you would only see the final image when it was all put together. But, Sony didn't want to do that, for instance. So vinyl is great because, you get to make the package large and you get to do cooler things with it. And I like the idea that you can have 300 copies of some orange speck or like whatever interesting like colors and
it kind of makes it special as well.
It does, and I think in this world of like everything being mass produced stuff that you can buy everywhere, the idea that there are still things that are handmade or have an element of something that's crafted. I just like, every record we've put out recently re-released, we've had something that was hand screen printed or hand die cut or something that was done by like an artisan that we trust, that you just know is like completely one of a kind and you can't get anywhere else. And I think that is kind of how I've always approached music in general. So I like the idea of vinyl for that reason, really.
Let's go.
Now, are there any on the tour, obviously, is there any songs that you're really, really looking forward to playing off this album that you may have not got a chance to before, that you are thinking might be surprises as the way they come across live to the crowd? Is there any that you're a little bit hesitant on how they'll come across, or, even performing them yourself?
I think because we did Emotion is Dead 4 years ago, we didn't do a lot of shows, but we did it in the States and maybe about 12 cities, and everything went over really well on it. And there are a couple songs that like Josh and I in particular don't particularly love playing. Like I said, Something Isn't Right Here is definitely not my favorite, but they're all fun to play, in all honesty. And as soon as you look out into an audience and you see people that have memories attached to those songs and they care about them and they're singing them back to you, it's just great. So really, I just look forward to the experience of like, it's just a collective thing to be able to look out and see everybody out there, together. It's awesome.
And when it comes to encore bonus tracks, how hard is that to pick off other albums? And is there stuff there that you're like, we're just not going to get a chance to play this, but fuck, it would be cool if we could?
Yeah, we think that's something we think about all the time, because it's like we try to be pretty diplomatic in that, and we usually, I remember before the band broke up, the last couple of years, our set lists were very much, this is what we want to play, and we're going to play a bunch of new stuff, and like we don't really care. But we've completely switched, and now we kind of go like, what are the most people asking for at shows that we haven't played for a while? Like, what are we getting hit up in the DMs for? What is like top streamed songs from our catalog that aren't on those records? And we try to really think about the stuff that we know people want to hear and skip like there's certain songs that we would probably want to play that we haven't in a long time, just because only we like them or whatever. So
Sure.
yeah.
Is there
just,
any?
oh, sorry.
Sorry, is there any surprises in terms of, like, obviously you pay attention to what people are asking and what they're sending in the DMs and comments? Are there any surprises for you that you didn't expect people would be so, like outwardly wanting to hear?
Yeah, well, you actually said one of the things earlier, and that is, so when Love was released, it was very, there were fans that appreciated it right away, but in general, if we had to pick a general consensus, it seemed that way more people hated it than liked it. And it was really intense for a while, where, I mean, the label Epic Records was basically like, you made the wrong record. And a bunch of our fans and even contemporaries basically were like, why in the world did you change to this sound? This is terrible. And now
they're all stupid dum-dums, and I want to know all their names so I can tell them to their face, because that album is fucking phenomenal.
Well, thank you. Well, so that's what's crazy is now every time we do something, just any show, anything, people are always like, Love is so good. We love Love. No, it wasn't cool at the time, but it's grown on us, or it's our favorite album of yours. So it really seems like it found its audience, or its audience got more vocal, or I don't know. But yeah.
You know what, man? I think, honestly, I think it might be what I mentioned before. It has that added element of a little bit of an extra sort of lean towards classic rock, and that is a proven timeless style of music. That's why people are still listening to Nirvana. It's why people are still listening to Black Sabbath. It's that it works.
You touched before about like looking at the streaming numbers. There was a good while where Deadbeat wasn't available on streaming.
Yeah,
to my chagrin. What does that factor into it for you? I've been like, well, fuck, there was like a while there where you could listen to Emotion, you could listen to Love, but that wasn't a thing that people would go and stream.
Well, what's crazy about that is I've been vocal in the past about some of our record deals being very unfavorable, and about having drama with record labels. And that record came out on Abacus Records, which was a kind of like a rock division of Century Media, and Century Media is like just like a heavy label, like a metal label. And a few years ago, we reached out to the owner of Abacus Records. His name is Robert Kampf, and we reached out to him to basically ask. I think it might have been about putting it out on vinyl. I can't remember the exact thing we asked, but we basically asked him, like, we know you own this. What's the status of if we could license it or get it online or something? And he just wrote back and was like, I want to give you guys back the masters for this record. Wow. For $1. And so we gave him $1, and he gave us back like the masters. So we fully own that record. It's
we love that guy.
Yeah. And awesome. So right, so he's like such a good dude. So it's really nice to hear that. But yeah, so that was unavailable for a long time, and then when he gave us the rights back, we tried to obviously just put it up on streaming and everything else.
So what you're saying is you want more people to stream that album, so you guys get a little bit more. And I'll help. I'll do it. I'll keep streaming it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
That's so good. Well, I love that. Well, dude, as I said, we are huge fans from the get-go of the band. We're really excited to have you come out. It's a stacked package, and we look forward to reminiscing with you guys.
We can't wait.
We will definitely be at least one or two of the shows. So hopefully we can stop by and say hello.
We have one final question, and that's off the back of you guys playing a album in full. And this is something we've asked a lot of people lately. For you, what is one album that you would like to go and experience front to back in full? Dead or alive artist?
Well, dead or alive, that changes it, because my brain just automatically went to people that are still alive, which is like definitely cuts the pull down a little bit. Like, man, if I can be totally honest, I wish that I could go and actually be at San Quentin prison when Johnny Cash recorded live at San Quentin, because what I've
Thought you
seen
were going
that
to say
footage,
Nickelback for a second.
that as well. This is how you remind me of. We did play a radio festival once with Nickelback, and I was impressed with the amount of pyro they had. They had a lot of pyro. But yeah, that Johnny Cash, any of those couple Johnny Cash records at prisons, like I feel like seeing that in the '60s would have been like just mind blowing. So,
that's a cool answer, yeah, because of the setting of it. No one has ever answered being like, in this setting, I would like to see it. Everyone's been like, I'd like to see this album for this reason. But also, I think the setting does play into it a bit. So good answer.
I mean, I don't necessarily want to. Don't want to go to jail, but if I had to, that would be the reason.
Johnny Cash is the reason.
Yes.
Dude, thank you so much again. We appreciate your time, and really, really can't wait to see this album played and finally get to catch you guys.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much, dude. Take
Thanks,
care.
Brett. We'll see you soon, man.
See you later. See you.